Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Uncovered podcast. I am Behram Kazi, who you can find at TefMango on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Jarrod Kimber, who you can find literally everywhere. Sorry for the delay. Jarrod was busy with another podcast, and you guys should be used to it by now anyway. But anyway, we'll be touching on a lot of off-field cricket news after this short ad.
Thanks to MP Play, I was able to make this. Their advanced technology can help any cricket team elevate their skills and performance.
If you have a passion for sports and aspire to work in the industry, I invite you to explore my course, Fans with Laptops. This program is designed to equip you with the knowledge and skills necessary to excel in sports journalism. Fans with Laptops is a test match course tailored to the digestible T20 world. Embrace your nerdish obsession for sports and unlock your potential by enrolling in Fans with Laptops. Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.
Welcome back, folks, and thank you for remaining patient, of course, as always. We've got Abdul TS, Argo Kopite, Prats, Hassan Hayat, Fine X Bro, Krunk, Gitesh Jha, Varun, Vignesh Ram, and Archit Awadhane in the comments. So welcome to all of you guys as well. We've got a vast itinerary of topics today, starting with new age retirements. There've been a few. Jarrod, let's start with Shakib Al Hasan. He, in a press conference in India, said that he has probably played his last T20 international for Bangladesh, and he wants to say goodbye to ODI cricket after the end of the Champions Trophy in Pakistan, or we'll see if that is in Pakistan or not. And also, he's expressed his desire to play his final test match in Mirpur versus South Africa if that series goes through in October. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame because they finally put their team together exactly as you kind of would want it. But watching him play in the last game, he maybe didn't look like a test player anymore. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's as simple as that. He thought to himself, do you know what? It's not quite working the way I wanted it to work. Time to go. We've been working on a video for ages about this incredibly weird career that he has had so far. And we haven't quite put it together, but it's like in my notes, and I think Cheyenne put I put a bunch of it together, but it really is one of the most spectacularly weird careers we have ever seen. You've got someone who's been suspended, due to fixing at times. The thing
breaking the stumps, of course. Let's not forget breaking the stumps.
Pointing to his groin on camera, and yet probably one of the best all-rounders of all time. Like, I don't know how high he ends up on that list, but what's his bowling average? 33, maybe 32.
I haven't taken a look at it in Test cricket, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know in ODI cricket, I did this once. His numbers in ODI cricket, more than stack up with anyone, really. He's got a phenomenal record in ODI cricket, and you look at his Test numbers as well, and you're like, this is a player who, is sort of next level when it comes to all-rounders. There just aren't that many all-rounders who can do what he does. So, more than 35 with the bat in Test cricket and less than 32 with the ball. I can't imagine there's that many people in the history of cricket that have done that. And if you put it up, it's more than 38 with the bat, really, isn't it? So, then you look at ODI cricket, averaging, again, about 38 again, a good, steady ODI player, and better than 30 with the ball at under 5 and over. Like, I think if you put those metrics into the history of cricket, you're not going to find too many people who've ever done that. And he did that when Bangladesh cricket has not been particularly strong, right? Like, yeah. Is just like it's gone on in the background, and then he comes back and you're just like, oh, of course, no, it's still Shakib. Like, he's nuts. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how the remainder of his career pans out. Of course, he has specified that he wants to be assured security by the BCB, but the new BCB head Farooq Ahmed has said that Shakib's security is not in the board's hands. It cannot be guaranteed, and that level of security or confirmation of it has to come from the highest level of government, because we know a lot has gone on in Bangladesh and Shakib was part of the Awami League. So it's very, very complicated. He is still charged with supposed, what is it, accomplice to murder or something like that, even though he wasn't in the country. So
I don't
we
think
know all of
he
those
hasn't been
details.
charged, has he? He's been linked to that death, hasn't he? So I mean,
Yes.
there's so much going on, and that's the point with him. Like, it's a really confusing time for him in his life, I would say as well. Like, I know he's a grown adult, and and he's had to deal with some shit, so he'll be able to deal with it. But it's a really confusing time for him, right? Like,
Yeah.
politically, you come to the end of your career as a professional. That's a hard thing. It'd be interesting to see if he feels like he's got any franchise cricket left in him. I mean, we talked about him. He was a franchise star at one stage, right? Like, that kind of died off, but there was a period when he was whacking it everywhere. And certainly for KKR, it was almost one of the players they built that sort of franchise around.
Yeah, I sure hope that he can somehow get that last swan song at home in Mirpur, because it would be a nice end to, his test career, and his numbers really hold up. He is unarguably, I would say, Bangladesh's most complete cricketer ever, right?
He's their
And
best
as
player,
you said,
isn't he? I don't think that's even in. I mean, I think there's some fantastic other players, but no one's on his level.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, as you said, he came in super young at a time where Bangladesh were, very clearly minnows, and him, along with, of course, Mushfiqur Rahim and Tamim Iqbal, Mashrafi Murtaza, those guys kind of, took Bangladesh cricket's profile 1 or 3 steps higher.
And it's worth remembering that, like, Ashraful was part of that. And think
Yes.
about the last time Ashraful, like, do you know what I mean? Like, the fact that Shakib has overcome the nonsense around his career, and Ashraful just disappeared, right? Like, and we know why, and some of it was form, and then obviously there was, the match fixing stuff and everything. But that's the truth of it. Is it was a bloody hard time to be a famous person in Bangladesh in a losing team, and he has all the scars of that, but he still has come out the other side. And this is right at the moment the best period of Bangladesh cricket history, right? This is them in their excelsis, and he's played a part in that.
Absolutely. And well, there is another side of this story, of course. Our friend Mohammad Assam mentioned how he's been pampered by the BCB, which is probably why you see a lot of this entitled behavior from Shakib as well, time after
I think
again.
that's fair. I mean, I remember being told that really early on, like before they were really good, and being taken aside by people in Bangladesh and going, these players aren't going to develop because of the way they are treated. And he is the epitome of that, right? Probably could have been a better cricketer if there had been a better system around him. I remember me and Kartikeya had this big conversation once about kind of where he would fit in. If you look at the sort of, I won't say the history of cricket, but like we were like, he could probably bat number 6 in a really, really good side and would still be a fantastic 5th bowler. Like, he's ended up being a far more important player to Bangladesh, but he could have fit into other teams as well. And at the very worst, he would have batted at number 7 for some teams and been a great number 7 batter as well. Like, he's a legit all-round talent, and he was treated like that, but it probably never meant that his game developed as much as it should have. And he's not the only really famous player to have that happen to them.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, or I will wait to see who plays Angelo Matthews in the Shakib Al Hasan biopic. Of course, that's going to be a lot of fun, right? But also, just on the retirement bit, of course, and we don't know how things will pan out. We're not sure if that series, the South African tests, will go through in Bangladesh or not, or whether or not Shakib takes the risk to go back home. Because it is a risk. No one is, or at least the BCB isn't guaranteeing security. So it's up to him, really. But he's also mentioned, and you'll love this, that if his form in franchise T20s is good, then he might unretire from T20 as he's open to that idea. So he's retired, but not really.
Yeah. And look, we've talked about this a lot. That's the future of all of this, isn't it? Like, no one's having a go at him for it. It is realistically how players do that now, right? And I can't blame him. When I heard he was retiring from T20 internationals, my first thought was, well, there isn't a World Cup for a while. And he's just thinking to himself, I don't want to play in a bunch of T20 World Cups, T20 games before the World Cup. But when the next World Cup comes around, if I feel like I'm doing okay, I'm more than happy to come back.
Very, very similar to the Ben Stokes situation, of course, who once again has said that, if Brendan McCullum, who is now the all-format head coach of England, wants him involved with the limited overs sides, then he will be back in the limited overs side. So he's
I think
also retired a couple of times, but it's never really meant anything.
Yeah, I think we just have to get used to it as a thing, and other sports have this as well, right? Like probably less so rugby, but you see this with sort of football and with basketball, don't you? I mean, the top European basketball stars, they don't even retire anymore because it's like it's not worth saying. They just make themselves available for certain events and not for other events, right? So,
Yep.
I'll play for the World Cup, but I won't play in the Champions Trophy. Will be a thing that will happen in the future, and all versions of that.
Yep. Welcome to the future of retirements, folks. The future is now. It's here. We're living through it. But there has been
But we're also not living through it. We've actually stopped living through it. But in a while, we'll come back and we'll live through it again. But then we're going to stop. We're only going to partly live through this future. And then later on, we're going to change what we meant by that.
Yeah. Of course, though, there has been one retirement that is a short retirement. It is real. Injury has cut short Dwayne Bravo's final CPL tournament, after which he has officially retired from all cricket, right? He has said that mentally he wants to go on, but physically he's done. His body simply can't keep up anymore. And Bravo, DJ Bravo, of course, is a T20 legend. He has scored 6,970 runs in the format, and he's also taken 631 wickets. And his pace variations and his slower one, that was like his USP for a long time in between. That's what made him special, along with the hard-hitting batting. I mean, it's definitely a fantastic legacy, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think people have forgotten that he made 100 against Australia in a test match in Australia. Like, he was a real talent coming through. Probably in test cricket, it would have been always harder for him to fit in, just because I'm not sure what his main skill would have ever been. So in a really good side, maybe you could have had him, but in a side that was struggling, they kind of needed batting or bowling. Although Darren Sammy had a good career, so there was other players like him that had come through. But that's the level of talent he had, and I think that he'll probably be remembered as a T20 player because that's where he's had the most impact. But it is worth remembering that the man could make 100 in Australia, right? And he is that kind of a player, and incredibly long career. I also think he was a pioneer in many ways, but he's a pioneer specifically in understanding that he needed a role in T20 cricket, Behram. Do you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't just going to be a T20 player. He needed a role, and he defined that role of, of like, I'm going to be the death bowler. And you look at his death numbers, they weren't always consistently great, right? Like, if you go through, I think he's a better death bowler than, say, Chris Morris. But Chris Morris gets thought of as like a hack by some people. And it's like, if you look at his numbers compared to Bravo and the deaths, you'd be like, I don't know, they look pretty similar to me. And so I don't think Crunks just put a message is Bravo near Boomer as a T20 bowler. I mean, he's not, and this is why I respect him more, though, because he's nowhere near that level. And yet he found a job, and in being someone who can bat and also being willing to bowl at the death, most frontline bowlers don't want to bowl at the death, right? Yeah. So you've got a guy here who did that. He also, in a sort of more classical sense, and you don't see this as much in modern cricket, he had the ability to ramp up or down with pace. And I don't think enough people kind of look at that these days. I don't think enough people sort of understand it's a very good way of going. Most bowlers now try and bowl at maximum pace all the time, and we understand why. I'm not having a go at that as a general principle. But traditionally, what you had was bowlers would bowl sort of just below their median pace, so that when they put the foot down, you felt it, and when you went away, and I'll tell you a great story. Mark Chapman, when we were in St. Lucia, I remember him coming off the field having faced Dwayne Bravo, and Bravo might have even got him out with a slow ball, Behram. I can't remember now, but he came off the field, and I just heard him having a chat to, I can't remember if it was David Warner or Brad Hodge, but I remember it was one of the senior Australians in the squad, and they were talking about the slow ball specifically, and Mark Chapman was basically saying, I just felt like he was bowling the ball at my face, right? Yeah. And then at the last minute, it was down at my stumps. And he was talking, he'd faced, at this stage, he wasn't an inexperienced cricketer. He played a lot of cricket. He's saying he just never faced anyone drop the ball like that. That's
the dip.
The savage dip that he had. And that was Bravo at his best. But I always like things like, there were times when his slow ball didn't work all that well. And he'd just be like, I'm just going to bowl around the wicket at the back heel. And it'd be like, wow, that's a risky thing to do with leg side wides and the way you can't, put so many fielders on the leg side. And he would nail that as well. So his ability to do all that from a limited skill set, as in, I don't think he was ever a great frontline bowler overall, talent-wise. And I don't think he was ever a great frontline batter overall. But he would nail each individual role, like the guy who would come in and hit at the end, like the guy who would bowl at the death, like the guy who would work out how to dry up the middle overs, whatever he needed to do. Nothing but respect for the fact that, we had that comment a minute ago. Is he as good as Bumrah? No, he's nowhere near it. But the fact that anyone's even taking that name, I just think it tells you. And, he was just a brilliant cricket athlete who matched that with a brilliant cricket mind. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that his talent was lower than some of the other players that, of his generation. But I don't think his performances were lower because he worked out how to get the most out of himself.
He was really flamboyant when he got going. You would enjoy watching Dwayne Bravo hit sixes. Someone just mentioned over here in the comments that he is now the new KKR mentor after Gambhir is the head coach of India. So that's
really interesting.
Like that's the next phase of his career. Maybe that even prompted him to, kind of expedite the retirement. We don't know that for sure. It's funny how...
I think because he was such a great athlete, if his body's not working, like that's a big part of him. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you get athletes who don't rely on their athleticism, they, as long as they can keep playing, whereas you get other athletes who rely, especially as an all-rounder. It's more so as an all-rounder, right? Because he has to be fit to bowl each day, and things start to hurt when you're old.
I don't know if you've watched that clip or not, or some of you might have definitely not watched it. Go to YouTube and search the Flintoff sledging Dwayne Bravo clip where Flintoff is like, you probably won't be around over here next year, something like that. Well, he's had a long-ass career, right? Sure, Test cricket, maybe not as long, but in cricket, he's been very, very relevant, and he made the T20 format his very own. Jarrod, the man has won 17 T20 titles across international and franchise. 2 of those are World Cups, right? I don't even know if anyone else has that decorated trophy cabinet.
It's funny before when you said he's retired from T20 cricket, and the first thought in my mind was, well, he's played all of it.
Yeah.
Right? I used to make the joke that like you would turn on the TV and he'd be playing in 2 leagues at the same time in 2 different countries. Like,
if he has
be playing that much,
if he has 17 T20 titles, maybe he has like 5 different songs for those titles, right? He's done that bit as well.
Yeah, I all respect to him for what he did with his music career and everything. I think slightly better cricketer than a musician.
Well, a viral musician nonetheless, because we all
a hit is a hit, man.
Songs. Yeah.
We've been calling him DJ Bravo ever since, right? Like, he branded himself. He did it right.
I remember when he won the PSL and they even had that Quetta Gladiators song. It was all the rage in Pakistan. So it transcended boundaries. It wasn't just the champion song. There were many hit tracks. But yeah, I'll agree with you there. Definitely a better cricketer than musician. All right, let's go on to some dark news. Or maybe it's positive. Depends on where you're looking at this from. Right? So shortly after having copped a 12-point deduction in the county championship after that wide bat incident, Essex have now been hit with a £100,000 fine after being found guilty of systemic racism. And basically, Jarrod, there were 3 former cricketers who gave testimonies. One of them was of South Asian descent, and apparently he had been nicknamed Bomber. And another guy was black, and he was taunted with bananas at the county. So I remember when I was over at your place in England, we actually discussed Essex and their racism problems off camera. They finally come to light.
Yeah, I was told that it was a lot worse than Yorkshire, all things considered. It doesn't feel like that is what has come out. So that could have just been cricketers talking behind the thing. But I know there was a lot of cricketers who were saying, you think Yorkshire's bad? Wait till you hear what happens at Essex. So it was known on the circuit. Whether it was known before the Yorkshire thing, I'd have to go back and have a look. But yeah, look, there's no doubt that there was an issue there. I'm not particularly surprised. I suppose the most obvious thing is here that someone had a slightly too wide bat and they lose 12 points and they get no points deduction. Then I don't know. I just remember when Durham were really bad and they got lost at lunch points for being bad at cricket. I just think, for being bad at administration, I should say. I kind of think that Essex should have lost them in a similar way here. But yes, look, it's something that has to happen. There's a lot of former cricketers who are still going to be very upset at all this sort of stuff. But the truth is, when you hear about bananas and all that sort of stuff and the nicknames and everything, you're just like, well, guys, you brought it on yourself. And
Yeah.
there's some, a bit like there was at Yorkshire, there's some big name cricketers in that change room who had the ability through their personality to, play a part in making it better. And it's a shame it's had to get here.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's very much necessary, but there is some history over here. I was like doing some research, and apparently, back in the day, former club chair John Farragher, sorry, he used the N word, which led to a £50,000 fine for Essex in May 2022. So there is precedent over here, and now it's happened again, and you've doubled the fine. But now I'm wondering whether these punishments are harsh enough. Like, can you just get away with a fine then?
It's a weird one because I suppose realistically, I mean, I'm not saying 100,000 is not big, but they're about to get a payday from probably IPL owners shortly anyway, right? So it's not really about the money. It's really about the PR hit.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you look at Scottish cricket, like they didn't find themselves, right? But by that coming out about Scottish cricket, there's a cloud over Scottish cricket at the moment that the Dutch and the Ireland don't have to deal with, right? And it's the same if you compare Essex to, I don't know, other teams around them, like, I don't know, Kent or Hampshire or, Sussex or whatever, other teams in their general vicinity. Do you know what I mean? Like you're going to have to win back trust and everything. So,
yeah.
I mean, I understand why people are, that's why I think I always think with sport that the best thing you can do is actually find the actual team, because that's the thing that matters to everyone, right? The £100,000 fine doesn't really mean all that much, I don't think, if that makes sense. Whereas what really it would be upsetting if this happened. But what other people would then say is, well, the current players had nothing to do with what happened there, so why should they be penalised? Blah blah blah. Although you could have made the same argument for Durham. So yeah, look, the whole thing's weird. Either way that you look at it, I think the most important thing is that these things are coming to light and they're being talked about. The actual penalties probably don't matter all that much, but it does look a little bit ridiculous when you compare it to the penalty for the. It reminds me of the. You remember Faf du Plessis got the same fine for having the wrong color shoelaces as he did with tampering with the ball, and then like it's just like it either matters or it doesn't matter, right? And there is an element here, I think, of what we're saying is, how much does this matter? Are we saying that this is less important than having like an extra millimeter on your bat that you didn't know about?
I mean, I would just like to see some actionable, responses, really, so that this is avoided in the future. Sure, you've ended up paying 150,000 quid in fines over 2 years, but what's the guarantee that this won't happen again? Maybe if you're getting more money in, would you even be worried? Is there, an intent over there or intention over there to actually change the culture at the county? That's what actually matters. And I'm not sure. I'm not close enough to it to tell you, or I don't even know if you can tell me if they're actually doing that or not, because at least at Yorkshire, it seems like they've chosen to sidestep a lot of it.
Yeah, look, it's tough. I mean, look at Scotland. Scotland kind of went all in on it, and now it's not gone the way that they wanted it. So Scotland have probably handled it the way that outsiders would wanted it handled, and it hasn't gone particularly well for them either. The truth is, there's no easy way of handling this. We're talking about a systemic issue that isn't just about sport, right?
Yeah.
It's literally about, well, the entire country, but the entire world, right?
The entire world.
So a lot of cricket clubs are run by people who have spent a lot of time in cricket clubs, and they don't always get it. I think when you sit them down and you explain it, and I've had, these conversations with some of these people before, when you sit them down and you actually explain what outsiders feel like in these cricket clubs, they start to understand a little bit more of, and then they'll give you a story of what it was like to be an outsider. And I was like, well, then if you understand how shit it was for you, now imagine that you making a lot of runs isn't going to change anything, because you're still going to be the same skin color or the same ethnicity or the same religious background. I said, that's the difference, right? You can just make a lot of runs and then the senior players stop messing with you, right? That doesn't always happen for these players. We saw with Pujara and his nickname, right? Like, it doesn't go away. And the truth is, the people running it, as I said, they need to get smarter. It's, but look at the world we're in at the moment.
I don't even want to go over there, because I look at every corner of this world and all I see is racism on the rise, and the us versus them narrative.
The US presidential campaign is so fascinating. everyone's saying that Donald Trump on the right is saying that Donald Trump is qualified to be the president, right? And they're saying that Kamala Harris is a DEI, what is it? Diversity hire, right? And it's like, she looks pretty qualified, like on paper, like. Were you saying that every level of every time she got her job? Because I know, like, that's not how life works. After a certain while, you don't just keep getting pushed up. And she looks more qualified than him. And so there are a lot of people sort of blowing back against those sorts of things and against what they see as wokeness, which is obviously just idiots.
I mean, not just America, Jarrod. I've had some experiences in the United States during Trump's era where there was, very overt racism. Like, I was told to go back to my own country. One woman in a theme park was like, yalla, yalla. And I was like, I'm not even Arab. But then there have been instances in other countries where it's not as overt. It's kind of like, blanketed.
I think so. That's the one thing that we need people to understand is that what we're talking about here is there's a big difference between calling someone the N-word, as you said before, and a lot of the other stuff that goes on. And the systemic stuff is worse quite often than the name calling, right?
Yep. It's because that kind of puts you at a disadvantage in your career.
Who can you go to if the whole club knows about the banana thing and the chairman and the CEO and the coach and the captain and whoever hasn't done anything? That's systemic issues, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here. So look, there are no easy answers to this, but I've been waiting for the Essex one to drop for a long time, so I'm glad that we have our first step in the public explanation of it, and hopefully good things come of it. But we're about to go into another story that's not particularly good straight after.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you said earlier, I really hope that at least the fact that we're talking about this and the news is coming out and at least there's some fines, hopefully we're on the right track. And even if we can't fix the world, which we definitely can't, maybe we can fix cricket, right? Maybe there is a future scenario.
Can't fix cricket, Behram. What are you talking about?
Yeah, anyway, it wasn't a good week for England and racism. Those two things have not gone together at all this week because there has been a social media post of English captain Heather Knight, which has emerged. It's from 2012, and the English skipper was pictured in blackface. Now, she has been She has been fined £1,000 and she has taken ownership of her actions, right? She's regretted them. And she said that she wasn't educated enough, aware enough back in the day and didn't have any ill intent, but she completely recognizes the implications and she wants to be involved, in a future where, there is inclusivity and these things are spoken about. So she's kind of, even though she can't, go back in time, she's kind of tried to right her wrong. But, this is very similar to the Justin Trudeau story, if you remember. There was also blackface over there.
I think there was certainly a period. I mean, we've probably talked about this before. So there's a famous Australian movie called The Castle, which is, seen as this comedy classic. I think it's quite popular in other parts of the world as well. The person who made that film, like I think he's the producer, but he might have written it as well, used to go on Australian TV in brownface and do an Imran Khan impression. And it was massively famous and everyone knew about it. It wasn't like a small thing. Greg Ritchie, the Queensland batter, who played a little bit for Australia as well. He had a comedy creation called Mahatma Coat, that was brownface, just making fun of Indians, over and over again. And I think he was doing it till really late. And Cricket Australia, he was in grounds, like doing racist comedy in grounds. And that's Telford Vice, I think, caught him doing something and exposed it.
And you're talking about Australia, and earlier we're talking about England, of course, where, white people are outnumbering the immigrant population, I suppose. But even if you go to places like Pakistan back in 2003 on a live, or not a live show, but a comedy show, a very popular comedian had kind of painted his face black and worn a Bangladesh jersey. So it's not like this is only a Western world problem.
No. And so my point is that I think it's really been the last 10 or maybe not even 10 years, but it's probably been around from 2005 to 2015 where a blackface was not seen as just another funny gag or brown face or whatever you want to call it, depending on which one is being done. It's just not another funny gag, that it is a bad thing. So, I mean, Heather Knight's in that section, right? Like, you know, I don't know how close that was to. Isn't there an English prince who dressed as a Nazi for fancy dress? Like, you know, and I was going to say went on to be really popular. He was popular for a while, not so popular these days. But do you know what I mean? Like, it was a thing. These sorts of things happened a lot more, I think. There was, I don't know if you remember, I got in so much trouble for this. So many people got angry, but there was people would go to cricket grounds in India and wear Adolf Hitler masks in 2007, 2008. Now, obviously,
Why?
Adolf
What's
Hitler
the science?
Adolf Hitler has a very different relationship to India. His books are sold as like a self-help book on the streets of India. I won't get into the full story. It's a really interesting one. One day I'll have to write a feature about it because it is so fascinating. But the point being is, quite clearly, if those people had been explained the full reason of it, they wouldn't have done it. And Heather Knight, the way she's owned up to this, I think she's another person that, I think if she had the full explanation of it at the time, I think she realized, and now she goes back. But it's also that period. I think 2008 to 2000, well, actually maybe 2000 to 2012. A lot of people put a lot of things online without the
Ollie Robinson.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of things that went on online at that stage. Whereas probably after 2012, because social media becomes so big, everyone's like, "Whoa, wait a minute, we can't say all these things, we can't show all these things." So I do think things change. That's not forgiving her because she still did the wrong thing, right?
There are some Indians in the comment section who have never seen an Adolf Hitler book.
So Mein Kampf you can buy on the streets of India. I've got photos of it on my phone, and it's not in all parts of India. But as I said, that's a completely different topic. The point being is not everyone always knows all of these things. I would have thought that someone like Heather Knight by that stage would have been more educated in those sorts of things. But, I could go through the full list of people in cricket, when it comes to trans issues who don't really understand the full. Do you know what I mean? And they will say things and you have to be like, no, that's not, et cetera, and try and explain it to them all the way through. But the truth is that there are still those people in the game, and whether it's Heather Knight or what happened at Essex, it goes back to that original point before of we all have friends in our lives or colleagues in our lives, or I don't know, all these sorts of things that still go on. And for Heather Knight, she's a public figure, and it's a much harsher spotlight now. But again, it's good because we can have a conversation like this.
Yeah, it is. Very interesting comments over here. Some people are saying that they have seen what Jarrod has seen, and then some people are saying that they've never seen Mein Kampf in India. But I can tell you from a Pakistani POV, I have seen a copy of the Mein Kampf translated into Urdu. So someone actually went on through that, trouble and actually translated the entire book. So I don't know what the science is over there, but, maybe it has something to do with, I don't know, Hitler with this perfect Aryan race, or the fact that he copied or stole a sign, right? Which was sacred to Hinduism, right?
I do think there is a point of that. There's actually, I'm just trying to find them now, but I've read academic pieces on India's relationship with Adolf. It's really fascinating. The point being is not everyone knows everything. I remember when I did, I'm trying to think. I think it was a piece that was talking. I think it was in my book, and I wrote about the West Indian cricketers who went to play in apartheid South Africa.
Yes, I remember us talking about that as well.
Yeah, and a friend of mine was saying to me, she was like, "Why do you think they've been treated so much worse than everyone else has?" Because Sri Lankan cricketers went over, and Australian cricketers, and English cricketers. And I said the thought process was that they should know better. But when you read the books about those cricketers, because there's been at least one great book written in the last couple of years, but there's some really good articles, and you start to listen. A lot of those players didn't know about the politics in South Africa. They weren't political people, and they didn't understand all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of in doing that they were warned by people. But they just, quite often you're warned by people. And so I think that we are, I think, as a society of humans, we're just constantly learning things, and we make mistakes all the way. And I think I think what Heather Knight has done here is very different. I think what Heather Knight has done here is very, very different to what we were talking about before. And that's why I really wanted to talk about the systemic issue.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
The systemic issue is so much more important than this. But that's how she learns, right? She would have learned about these sorts of things. And so we're definitely in a position where we can do that.
I'm definitely, going to throw my weight behind Heather Knight over here because we all make mistakes, and it was a long time ago, and she was 21 years of age. I can remember doing a lot of stupid shit when I was 21 years of age, right? And I have grown since then. I have evolved as a human being. So maybe she has as well. What complicates this, however, that she had already played for England at that time, right? So she would have gone through some of that process of educating, the team around racism or whatever. And she probably had some teammates of color. Did she not?
I don't think they. I mean, she would have had teammates of color. Or certainly, I mean, Ebony Rainsford Brent and Ishiguro was playing at the time. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I can think of off the top of my head. But I don't think there was much training on that sort of stuff back then in 2012. Like, and I'm not just saying England. I don't think most cricket teams would have talked about that stuff back in those days. I could be wrong, Behram. I could be misremembering it, but. My memory is my memory is it wasn't that big a deal. I remember that, and I don't remember what the year this was. This was a little bit before 2012, but maybe around 2009, 2010. Freddie Flintoff, his kids found a brown doll. And he was on Twitter. Me the story. Yeah, and he was on Twitter talking about the brown doll, and he named it Ravi after Ravi Bopara. And I'm pretty sure, I know I wrote about it, and I know the ECB looked into it, but I don't think anything happened to him at all. I don't know if he was educated on you can't do stuff like that, or whether he just, these kids lost the doll and it went away. But the point being is, at that stage, I think, it was just a very different, and it sounds weird, isn't it? It's only 12 years ago. But if you think about how much differently we speak about racing cricket now compared to 12 years ago, and I don't think that, to go back to what we were saying before, I don't think that, as you said, she was already a professional cricketer and everything else, but I don't think that cricketers were armed with the same kind of knowledge that they are now.
Yeah. Also, lots of conversation going on in the comments. It's gotten very political. So guys, just go and research a bit. Of course, Jarrod has seen something. He's reported on it. I've told you that I've seen a Urdu translated copy of the book as well in Pakistan, right? So maybe there's more to this story, or maybe it's something to do with the borrowed symbolism, which is unfair on Hinduism, if anything, right? So anyway, take a chill pill. We're going to go on a break and talk about some more cricket news.
No, I want to actually, just before we go, I'm not saying that means that there are all these Nazis in India, because that's not how the book was sold in India. And that's the point, is you see these things over and over again. And when I got really upset because I saw people with Hitler masks in Indian cricket grounds, but you have to understand the full context of all of these things, right? Of where these things come up with. So, there's, and I'm assuming over the last 10 years, they wouldn't be selling those on the streets anymore.
Like, I definitely haven't seen any in a cricket ground, right? On TV.
So the point being is that people have worked it out. And one thing that allows us to come together is the internet, right? In the old days, we were all in our silos, right? And so it didn't get out of our silo. And someone like Heather Knight, she would have probably grown up around other people who would have brown-faced, right? Like, I don't think that she was like the first person in her friendship group or community, or however you want to put it, who had ever done that, right? And so she would have thought it was a normal thing to do at that stage. And now she looks back on it and she's like, it's not. Like, this is what we do as a society. And hopefully the best of society is consistently trying to get better.
Yeah. As societies, we evolve all the time, and hopefully we can be rid of this particular, I don't know if England is quite there yet, honestly, with all the stuff in the news. But at least the cricketers are well aware, and Heather Knight taking ownership of this incident is a positive step. So I will, go on and say that she shouldn't be ridiculed for something that she did 12 years ago and she agrees is wrong, right? And as Jarrod said, maybe her environment just normalize this stuff for her, right? Because we see that sort of stuff all the time. I cannot tell you how racist brown people can be. You see a white man coming to Pakistan and they'll be treated like royalty. I'm not sure I can speak the same for a black man, for instance. These are things that are real. So anyway, let's take that break now, Jarrod, and we'll be back with some more news. You're watching Uncovered with Jarrod and Behram. Stay tuned.
I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories, like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.
Welcome back to Uncovered, and after some really tough conversations, let's move on to some happy news, Jarrod. The T20 World Cup, the Women's T20 World Cup is right on the brink. I think by the time this episode actually goes out on audio, it would have started. But, we have been told that there will be an all-female panel of officials for this T20 World Cup. 10 umpires, 3 referees, all women. And this is after the whole prize money thing that the ICC did, equal prize money for men and women. And we discussed the caveat with respect to that in a previous Uncovered, so you guys can go check that out. But it's good news, in a week where there's not been a lot of good news.
No, it's great. It's funny, actually. My son, Eek, said to me, I'm so excited, the Women's World Cup starting. And I was like, I mean, I think the younger, just to go back to our previous conversation, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? I remember at one stage my son saying to me, can we watch some men's cricket? Because I'd been watching, it must have been another World Cup, or, maybe I was watching WPL or whatever. Like, they've just grown up in a completely different generation. Whereas, if I had walked in and my dad was watching women's cricket on the TV, I would have been shocked that women had played cricket. And, it wasn't something that we saw all that much. I mean, I was, maybe shocked is the wrong term. I was lucky enough to, play in a couple of cricket clubs that had women around and playing and women's teams and everything. But that's not normal for most people, certainly of my age group. So no, look, it's fantastic. It's the second time I think they've had an all women's panel. I'm a bit surprised they're announcing it because I'm pretty sure they did for the last World Cup. Hypercourse might be in the comments as well, but because I remember at the last World Cup thinking, I hope this goes good, only because I don't think they've been very good at promoting women and getting them ready, if that makes sense. And I didn't want it to be a gimmick to say, oh, we've got all women umpiring, and then have really poor umpiring at the tournament because they hadn't done the work. But I don't remember it being a particularly badly umpired or any more poorly umpired than any other cricket I watched at that stage. It went well enough there. So look, it's another positive step. I think there was, if you want to throw in the ECB had moved towards contracts being more balanced as well between men's and women's cricket. I don't know if you saw that, which
I missed that.
Yeah, we talked about that previously. So they've got a plan to be able to get to some sort of a parity, which as I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, match fees and prize money is not where women need parity. It's in contracts. So, there's been a couple of good stories out there. I can't wait for the Women's World Cup. I think it'll be a really fun tournament. It's a shame it's not going to be in Bangladesh, I suppose, is the end. Only because I was kind of primed for it to be in Bangladesh, like mentally, and it's moved somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, we were discussing that particular element of it being in Bangladesh so much, and we were talking about which teams would be strong and how England might have a great chance with their spin attack with Charlie Dean, Sarah Glenn, and Sophie Eccleston. But maybe the UAE changes that a bit. Maybe dew comes into play. Maybe there's some flatter surfaces. We're not sure. But anyway, we're happy that the prize money will be equal and that, all the officials will be women. Of course, women's cricket still needs more work and there should be more parity with respect to contracts. And if you professionalize the sport further and, give more financial security to the nations which need it more, right? That's pretty much what it comes down to, because in all likelihood, one of Australia, England, or India will win this T20 World Cup. And they don't need that prize money as much as the other, lesser endowed women's cricket teams do. across the world. So, a step in the right direction, but still a long way to go, I suppose. All right, let's come to more bad news. This time it's the PCB. Once again, we haven't talked about them for a bit. I was kind of missing them, I suppose, on Uncovered. And now we're in the middle of this fiasco, if you will, where the first test match starts on October 7th between Pakistan and England in Multan. The day this show was recorded, and I'm doing this for the audio folk in particular, was September 28th. We are 8 days away from the first test, and the PCB has not yet, kind of finalized a broadcaster from England. And, this has been going on for quite a while. First, I heard that they had overpriced the rights, right, for this series, and then they kept on waiting and waiting and waiting. You have a story with respect to this as well, which you can tell if you want to. And then towards the end, now we're staring at a reality where Sky's probably not going to come. They might probably be ripped off by the BBC. And given that the series is 8 days away, this is an absolute shit show. Maybe shit show is not as strong a word.
It's bad because there aren't many. I mean, this is the most important series that Pakistan have, right?
Yes.
Because they don't play India. Like, getting the England stuff right is the most important thing. Look, all I would say is that I think cricket boards have been always pretty bad at signing rights deals a long way in advance. Australia, England, and India certainly have come to, I think they do it in a 4 and 5 year pattern now. So there is an element of that, which has made it a little bit better. But you go back traditionally, and cricket boards have been quite bad at this. And what broadcasters have been saying, and certainly when I've talked to them, is that it's very hard. Like, let's say, so I would assume that Sky was going to get the rights, right? And Sky would have assumed that they were going to get the rights.
And the PCB would want Sky to get the rights because everyone looks forward to the Sky's broadcasting team, and the commentators and the analysts and all of that stuff.
So, yes, it's important that the PCB get it on Sky, right? And so Sky would have thought they would get it. Here's where it's tough for Sky. If you are a commercial place, you have to sell ads. So let's say they sign the deal now 8 days out. They're not going to be able to make their advertising revenue back because they're not going to be able to talk to enough different places to go, we've got this cricket on. We think it's going to be really popular, blah, 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 right? And so, we have a situation there where you are putting yourself in a position where you don't understand that those people have to on-sell stuff, right? And so for the cricket board, they want to get as much money out of it as possible. That's fine. They should have been doing that a year ago.
Yeah, and
there's
do you
only
remember
two places in the UK to sell it to, right? For TV, it's basically TNT or Sky, right? That deal could have been done a year ago, and they haven't done that. And now they put themselves in a situation. Whereas if I was Sky or TNT, I'd be like, we need a discount now. So, and it's not just this. This happens with radio. It happens with some sort of digital rights as well. It happens with betting rights, all this sort of stuff. If you wait to the last minute, no one's going to want to pay you what it is worth anymore because they can't get back at their end, right? If they had a year to do this, they could have been advertising this for a year, and they could have been going up to their advertisers and going, we've actually got a really interesting series here. It's not a great time zone, but it's not a bad time zone. And last time, England did this.
Yes. Right? I mean, it's really shocking. Honestly, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when I was over in England and I was going to Lord's every day, I remember coming back home and telling you that, hey, I spoke to Nasser today. The broadcasting rights haven't been sold, and he doesn't even know if they're going to be coming to Pakistan or not. This was shocking to me in July. We are 8 days away from the start of the series, right? Like, I cannot stress that enough. And it will be an absolute shame if the Sky team doesn't come, because I know how much Pakistan's, cricket fans love the Sky team. They absolutely adore them. I look forward to rubbing shoulders with Athas and Nasser and the like. And it's not just limited to broadcasting. The Barmy Army is pissed because they released the schedule 8 days ago, which is Multan Pindi. We didn't know that for the longest time. And now I've been told, or I've read somewhere, that there was a hotel that had been booked by the Barmy Army. and their booking has been cancelled because the teams will now be staying in that hotel. So those Barmy Army fans are without a hotel. So Pakistan is doing everything, or the PCB is doing everything it possibly can to discourage people for making the trip and coming to watch the cricket, right? It is so baffling that the one series that matters most is England and Australia, right? Those are the two cash cows. You have to milk them. Why are you sending the cow into exile? Why are you sending it to another farm? Why are you buying your milk from a store?
Do you know what? And this is a big story because the broadcast hasn't just picked the rights up. So usually what would happen is the PCB would just sell it for a discount at this stage. And it's become a bigger story because they haven't done that, which, I mean, they're holding out for their price. But I need to let everyone know just how often this happens. So I'm a commentator and I work for TalkSport. And I had to ask about a month ago if I had to prepare to go to Pakistan. Right? I didn't know 5 weeks out from this tournament or this series whether I was going. And it's not the first time that's happened. It's happened multiple times before. And, sometimes I'm in a position where I'll be told like 3 days before, can you get a visa for this country? Right? Because we've suddenly got rights for it. This happens so often in so many different countries around the world. And there's no reason for this to happen. They've known about this series for a long time. They could have sold it. They could have done this. I think they were holding out for a bit too much money, and maybe that's partly caused it here. But the market isn't that strong for cricket in the UK for this particular tour. As I said, there's really only 2 people that are going to show it, right? Yeah. So if one of them doesn't want it that much, and it's the same with the radio deal. It's, BBC and TalkSport. There's really 4 people that cover the 2 different rights deals that you're trying to sell at any one time. And if one of them doesn't want it, I don't know, it clashes with something else. There's a Women's World Cup on, whatever that may be. You're in a situation where you're stuffed, right?
Yep.
And you had to think about that a year ago, and instead you're thinking about it with 8 days to go. And it's just, it's so last minute. So much of the sport is so last minute, and I can't deal with it. And quite often people will say to me, "Are you going on this tour?" And I'll be like, I won't know till a month before, right?
Jarrod, I do not know if I have accreditation for the Multan tests yet. The test match is 8 days away.
This podcast.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm really surprised that I keep getting accreditation after all the things that I say on both your podcast and Pro Sports. But point is that everything is so last minute that I feel like the PCB epitomizes last minute. Like, do you know about that entire Champions Cup? That Champions Cup tournament was held last minute. I think the chairman's been so busy focusing on that he's forgotten these things. Maybe there was an under-19 tournament that was shelved after 1 day of play.
Yeah.
After there was a day of play, it was shelved. The women's tournament wasn't even scheduled or organized. We don't know what the under-19's women's team looks like. So they're big swings, as we always talk about. But when it comes to implementation, a lot of it just gets lost in translation.
Yeah. I mean, cricket isn't run very well. This may not be the first time I've ever mentioned it on this podcast.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that wraps up all of our talking points. But we have some super chats, so let's go to them. First one is coming from Reddit RCB channel, in which he asks 2012 West Indies versus 2016 West Indies versus 2024 India, which is the best ever team to win a T20 World Cup. Wow, that is a tough one. That is a really tough one.
I kind of think my memory is, and I was looking this up recently. My memory is that on paper, I think I like the 2014 West Indies side the best, and they didn't win it that year, which does tell you how random all this is. I would have to go back and have a look. I think I still like 2016 West Indies. So I think it would be between 2016 West Indies and 2024 India. Realistically,
the West Indies
T20 cricket is better now than it used to be, so it should be India. It should almost always be the last team who's won it, right? But if we're talking
T20
about
cricket has
with it,
no, it's seen so much changes the sport T20 cricket that obviously the right answer might be India. But if you look at like team composition, which West Indian team out of those two had both Narayan and Badri?
I don't think 2016 had Narayan.
Yeah, so then maybe 2012 is the answer, because when you pair those guys up with the Pollards and the Bravos and the Gales, then that is a really strong team. But if you remember those T20 World Cups, 2012 wasn't a fast-scoring World Cup at all. The games were sluggish,
Andre Russell,
right?
Was Andre Russell a star in 2012 though?
That's a good question.
Because by 2016, like he has that innings against India, right? Like things have started to change. I also thought their batting was a bit deeper in 2016, but yeah, I mean, I don't. I'd have to go back because it is a bit of a mush because they, there were 3 tournaments every 2 years there. I'd have to go back and have a look at the full lineup to be able to answer that. But but I would think I reckon I've looked at it at least once before, and I really like that 2016 team. So I would have that and the India side as the 2 obvious ones at the top.
Yeah, India one is obvious because we know that they had all bases covered and they just won a T20 World Cup when the game has evolved to a point that there's so much intricacies to it. There's a science behind the sport. That was not so prominent back then.
I really like England and Pakistan in the 2021, or was it 2022 edition? And neither of them won it. So,
No, England won 2022, but you're talking about 2021 when everyone thought it was going to be an England-Pakistan final. Ben Stokes tweeted
2021.
about it. And then ultimately it was Australia versus New Zealand.
But that also proves my point of not being able to remember which one's which, right?
Yeah, fair enough. I hope that answered your question, Reddit RCB channel. Anyway, let's go further to Trishant Khatri. He says, now with the additional match fees in IPL, make the foreign players more available. Oh, now with additional match fees in the IPL, are foreign players going to be more available? I think that's what this is about.
Oh, I think they're pretty available already. Remember, I've said this before. The wages that players get in the IPL are not actually what they get paid. They usually get paid a lot more than that. The salary cap is not enforced. Well, certainly not enforced in the way that it is in, American sports.
Plus, it's 7.5 lakhs per game, which is still money. But if you compare it to all the money that they already make, maybe it's not as significant. I don't know. I haven't done the math over here.
Yeah. So, no, look, I think they're available. Look, I don't want to betray any confidences, but there was a player in the last, 3 or 4 years who pulled out. And he pulled out largely because he knew how much he was going to get paid, it was money, but it wasn't life-changing money to him at that stage. And then separate to that, he didn't want to go for 2 months and perhaps sit on a bench. It wasn't where he was in his career in that way. And also he was trying to ramp up, and he knew that if he went to the IPL, he would struggle to ramp up to the level that he wanted to get to. There's lots of different confusing reasons why people don't make, that. And I almost think that the IPL in some ways, I'm trying to think of a league that you could compare it to, but not everyone wants to maximize their earning potential for every minute of the day. If you're earning really, really good money in your home country already, you might not think to yourself, I need to absolutely be in this league, unless it's, as I said, life-changing money or future-changing money, right? And so players make decisions based on many different elements, and I don't think that's going to change. I think that will change when, I should say, I don't think it's going to change now. I think that will change when it's a 4 or 5 or 6 months.
Yes.
And you're talking about the same amount of money, but stretched out over a long period of time. I think at that stage, no foreign players are going to say they're not going to be available for it unless they're injured or there's a personal issue and everything else.
And plus, if you have games every weekend in that kind of model, right, as opposed to every single day, then maybe some foreign players are like, okay, I'll let go of, I don't know, how much would 3 weeks over here be? 22.5 lakhs, right? And play a test series. Maybe that's a reality in the future. Who's to say? But I think where this is coming from, at least from an IPL perspective, is that they want to kind of lure the players to play the IPL whenever there's an international commitment, like, we witnessed with England this time around, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the ploy over here.
The truth is, and this is going to sound weird because of how much IPL players get paid, they still get underpaid. And I've said this a lot, right? Like, if you look at IPL players overall, they still get underpaid considering what the IPL pie is. So if you look at it compared to, say, American sports, where you might get 25% of the pie or 50% of the pie, the players and the Indian players are the ones being most ripped off on this because they're the ones who really build this league. All the players are underpaid. If you actually took them on, if you actually gave them, 10% or 15% of the TV revenue in any 1 year, or the streaming revenue in any 1 year, the players would be paid so much there would be no conversation about whether a player would come out ever again. And that's what they should be earning because they're the ones that we pay to watch, right? That's how it works. And we're not in that situation at the moment. I would say that the people that I would say that are most underpaid probably are commentators and players. considering how famous they are and how many views this gets and how much money this thing makes. And I'm not a IPL commentator. I don't know what their exact salaries are, but you compare that to whatever it was, Charles Barkley getting paid $20 million a year, right?
Yeah.
Charles Barkley's incredible. But Harsha Bhogle and Ravi Shastri are bigger names within their own country with more viewership in a league that's making billions of dollars, and we're not seeing that money trickle down to all of those people involved. So once that happened, and I know people who made very good money from commentating in the IPL who are just like, yeah, but okay, I've done it now, and I made some good money, and I've paid off my mortgage, and I'm done. There's a difference between that money and I can't say no money. And so the payment that we're talking about at the moment, I don't think it's got to can't say no money for everyone. For a lot of people, it is can't say. If you're a lot of the South Africans would say it is can't say no money, but a lot of people from the rest of the world don't quite, have the same kinds of issues, or can make money at home, or get their own radio show at home, or do you know what I mean? Like there are other ways for them to make money. Like it's not a one and done for all players at the moment. Whereas if it actually paid what it could pay, then it would be, I think at that stage, they would just be able to hire anyone they wanted at any time. And you might still get situations where players don't play because of personal issues and stuff, like what happened with Harry Brook. But you get that in every professional league. Like that's just that's just part of life now. It has nothing to do with it being the IPL or anything else.
Yeah. And I mean, if anyone at the IPL is listening this, or whoever is an administrator, make those players offers that they can't refuse. That is the takeaway.
I don't know. That's not the wording I would start with.
Anyway, Argo Kopite with the next super chat asks, with Shami out injured, unofficially retired Ishant, and Siraj being Siraj, are India too reliant on Bumrah for the Border Gavaskar Trophy, who has a history of back injuries?
Yeah,
well, Shami's going to be back, Agro. He's going to be back.
We're assuming. I mean, but I think what he's saying is that he's out injured at the moment anyway. So we don't know how fully fit he will be and whether he'll be able to play all the matches. I do think it's an issue, but I don't think it's like the end of the world. Like if you were saying what's the bigger issue today, Cameron Green potentially being out of the BGT is a far bigger issue for Australia than Siraj being the second seamer for India. I know they've got Aaron Hardy, so it's like, and Mitch Marsh, so they have like for like type dudes around, but Cameron Green, they were just getting to the point where they were really starting to trust him as a bowler. They got him to bat in his position. He played that incredible innings in New Zealand. Not the time you really want him not playing in a big series, especially as we've seen India. Not that I think India play this style anymore, but we've seen India tire out Australia's attack before. So I think that's a bigger one. But yes, I do. I mean, me and Deep Das Gupta did a really interesting show on TalkSport. You can find it on the TalkSport Cricket channel about this. Of like the problem with Siraj is not his talent, because his best ball is, I think, as good as anyone in the world's best ball.
Rhythm bowler, right?
Yeah, rhythm bowler. But his worst ball is dreadful. And he's not able to be a stock bowler. And I think they're going to need him to be a stock bowler at times in Australia, right? Over that series. But there are other talented Indian players out there. So it's maybe not the end of the world. But yeah, the Cameron Green news, and we have no idea how long Cameron Green is going to be out or how bad it is or anything. But he's bloody massively tall and it's a back injury. It's very rarely good news.
Yeah, no, that is a big hit for Australia. And I mean, Agro, you can look at the last time India won a test match in Australia in the Gabba test. A lot of those guys, their main performers, were out injured. So who knows, maybe the reserve talent is good enough to win a test match in Australia. We'll just have to wait and find out on that one. And I mean, hopefully Bumrah will be fit throughout. So we'll see. Anyway, final super chat question of the day. Path right winger, never misses, always hits, asks Jarrod. Jarrod, you said that Ashwin, Kuldeep, and I think he means Shardul when he says Lord, at 7, 8, and 9 for Border Gavaskar Trophy is a pipe dream. How about Hardik, Ashwin, Kuldeep at 7, 8, 9? P.S. Oh, I'm not going to say the next time, but next thing. I'm going to get in trouble, Path.
How about... Yeah, no, I like that. I think once Hardik made it clear, because I think for a while we didn't really know. I'd heard some rumors, but I don't know if we knew for a while if he was really making a ramping up for the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and then probably after I recorded that, we found out he was. He's way different. I mean, you're talking about the numbers changing, right? So Ashwin no longer has to bat at 7; he has to bat at 8. That's a much more comfortable position for Ashwin. And the same with Kuldeep at batting at 9. So you're moving those two guys back, and you're doing it with a guy who can, I think, is a better bowling prospect in Australia than Shardul as well. As in, I think Shardul's really good in certain situations, but I want Hardik for the dog overs in Australia, right? Like I want one spell with the oldish new ball, and then I want him to come on twice and bowl 3 or 4 overs of, either defensive bowling or just bounces, right? And so he fits into the Indian team, I think, a lot better. But it doesn't matter because they're not going to have, it's not going to be Ashwin and Kuldeep. Jadeja is definitely going to play in that lineup anyway. So, but imagine if Hardik plays and they have Ashwin Jadeja at 7 and they have Hardik at 8. That's an incredibly long batting lineup, which again is a huge plus for them, I think.
Yep. And if they have 3 frontline seamers with those guys, then that's as complete a team as you could possibly ask for, at least in contemporary cricket. But anyway, that wraps up these super chats. So thank you guys for sending them, and your contributions are valued. Also to everyone else who was in the comment section, thank you so much for being here with us and interacting with us. We'll be back with another live show soon enough because there are a bunch of them lined up. The New Zealand-Sri Lanka test series will end. India-Bangladesh might have another live show. And then we're going to preview Pakistan versus England as well. So you guys don't have to worry about, more and more content coming through. I've actually planned the entire next week, so there'll be a podcast every day. But anyway, just a quick reminder, of course, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. It can prove to be a one-stop shop for all the work that we do, whether it be written content, podcasts, or videos. We'll see you guys when we'll see you. Till then, you have a good time, and that's goodbye from us.
This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minbo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so